How we made 50K using BRRRR, a case study. We're so excited to be here tonight. We connected with all of that. Like, it's been really amazing. So it's really cool to speak tonight. And we are really excited to share our experience. This was our first BRRRR, and we're going to share the ins and outs, the mistakes we made, the successes we had, and then Q&A. So this is the property. We were so excited to buy it. It's a triplex in the local market that we invest in, upstate New York. And this is just going to walk you through step by step exactly how we did it, because I think often with BRRRRs and hard money and private money, it can seem so overwhelming and intimidating. And I personally learn best from example and just seeing how someone else did something. And then you realize we're not smarter than you, we're not savvier than you. We just did it. These are very, like, I don't want to critique us, but we're not geniuses here. These are very easy, repeatable strategies that anyone can do.
Before we dive in,
diligence.
I want people to know too, like, we read all the books, we did all the podcasts, and that got us like 80% of the way to doing this deal.
But nothing teaches you like experience.
And there were probably like 15 moments within the deal that, like, things you just can't find from a book, where we're like, this was a terrible idea. Why did we think this? Oh, appraisal goes bad, blah, 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 which
we'll talk. The night before we closed, a pipe, do you remember we were doing the walkthrough with the owner and a pipe burst and the whole basement was flooded?
Yeah.
And this was our third property that we bought at the time. If this was our first, I would have been like sobbing, having a casual mental breakdown. This one, I was like, it's okay, whatever.
Yeah, we'll come back tomorrow.
You're going to fix the pipe. We're all good though.
Yeah.
So, real estate toughens you a little bit. All right. So anyway, how we found the deal. So I'm actually going to let you take this because you found the deal.
Yeah. So perpetually networking, one of the things I had mentioned to Mariah is we spend years sometimes, getting coffees, going to real estate meetups. Networking isn't necessarily like this fast and quick thing, because the thing is maybe more than any industry, at least in my experience, real estate really is a relationship driven, whether it's finding deals, finding capital, so on and so forth. So through a lot of networking, we met with, we actually had a company who was servicing other properties of ours. We spoke to the owner, and subsequently that business owner tipped us off to like a cousin who was in a tight spot and needed to sell their property quickly. And we're always telling people kind of who we are, what we're doing, and then what we're looking for, like what would be a good deal for us.
If you are a new or aspiring investor, I would wager to guess that you may have or currently struggle with imposter syndrome of, like, you don't want to call yourself a real estate investor. Maybe you're nervous going to the real estate meetups because it's like, who am I? I don't know anything. I haven't done anything yet. And that was something that we really faced and was challenging. But the more we put ourselves out of our comfort zone and we went to these meetups and we talked to other investors and we said, hey, we're Josh and Allie. We're newlyweds. We live in upstate New York. We're looking to scale a small multifamily portfolio. We're always looking to buy. If you know anyone that owns properties, is thinking of selling, please keep us in mind. And you say that again and again, you will be shocked how many people you connect to that bring deals to you. It's incredible.
You just got to stay consistent with it. So in terms of the actual deal analysis, so researching comparable sales or comps to determine your after repair value. Now, if any of this is like over people's head, I totally get it. 7 years ago, I was like, I don't know what any of this means. But really, you're trying to find out what have similar properties in this area sold for, ideally in the last 6 months, sometimes in the last year, because now you have, like, these are real deals that are similar, and now you have some real tangible data to go off of in terms of what those prices were. So for instance, we use Zillow to see recently sold properties. We also have many real estate agent friends who are also investors who gave us access to the MLS to get comps, so on and so forth. So once we knew what this property was reasonably worth, we could kind of start working backwards from there, which we'll dive into. We also needed to determine what was the reasonable rent, right? It was a 3-unit building. Each unit had kind of different room and different floor plans. And so figuring out that with the help of Zillow, Rentometer, Facebook, etc. So what we came to the conclusion was, and I know for some people these prices will seem ridiculous, the estimated value at that time was about 235,000, between 235 and 240. Now, we knew that we needed to have at least 25% equity. So where does 25% equity come from? Well, typically on this type of deal, a bank, depending on the lender, I should say, usually will only lend up to anywhere between 20 to 25%, what's referred to as loan to value. So if a property hypothetically was worth 100,000, many lenders don't want to go above 80,000, maybe 75, 80,000. Once you start going beyond that, they really like to see more equity because frankly, as the lender, that protects them. Depending on, some banks won't even do beyond 70% loan to value, but that's really going to be like a lender specific question. So that's how we did that. So for us, when we knew valuation between 235 and 240, we backed our way into, we knew our max allowable offer was about $190,000.
The reason for this is that we knew we wanted to buy the property for cash using hard money, put as little money into the deal, and then when we went around to refinance it, we didn't want to be stuck with having to leave a ton of money in the deal. And that's what ends up happening if you don't run your numbers appropriately or it doesn't appraise for what you need it to. So that's why all of this, like buying the deal is such a tiny piece of the equation. Like all of this back work and analysis and everything is so critical.
I just say one thing if you go,
No.
okay. Well, as far as like, because you'll hear people will just kind of throw around the term like buy a deal. And I think sometimes people are kind of flippant. For us, a deal is only a deal if Mariah sells me a property on a Monday, if I can turn around on a Friday and make a profit, right? For me, that's actually, we're talking about a deal. That means I got enough of a discount. But realistically, sometimes people will pay like, you know, it's not a bad thing, but they'll pay like fair market value and they'll say like, oh, I got a deal. I'm like, sure, you got a property, but that's not necessarily to say you got a deal. And especially if you're looking to use the BRRRR strategy, you really need to get as deep of a discount as possible.
Yeah. So how we funded the deal, again, networking. Josh and I are very, very big on building personal connections and networking. So we had in our local network 2 investors, a retired couple. They had a paid off rental portfolio and we knew that they occasionally lent private money. So we had been talking to them again for years about, hey, when the right opportunity strikes, you know, if you know anyone that may be interested in lending, you know, can we share with you? Oh, yes, absolutely. So we were interested in this property. We looked at what the ARV was. We looked at the analysis. We looked at comparable sales in the area. We looked at what rents would be. We wrote up an entire analysis of this property, also known as a pro forma. It's a nice little sheet that gives you the stats of the property. We had our pro forma, we had all the comps, and we approached them and said, hey, this is the property. We didn't say, can we borrow money from you? Because that may have put them way too on the spot. We said, if you know anyone that would be interested in a deal like this, would you take a look? They were interested. We were able to work out a deal and fund the property through them and their network, which was actually hard money lending because it wasn't a private investor. It was more of an institution. So we were able to borrow 180,000 of hard money, aka cash. The interest rate was high on this. It was 12%, 2 points. We put 5% down of our own money and we purchased the property at $190,000. So in total, the cash to initially close on this deal with hard money was $16,660. So that's down payment plus closing costs.
So a couple things real quick, just to kind of spotlight there. So, you know, it's not uncommon, especially if you're just getting started, where an investor, or I'm sorry, like a lender, just to kind of hedge their bets a little bit and protect themselves, they might charge what's referred to as a point. A point is the equivalent of 1%, right? So if you took out
the purchase price
of the purchase, well, yeah, of the amount financed.
Right.
So if you took out $180,000 loan, 1 point would be 1,800, 2 points would be 3,600. So that's a fee directly to the lender, basically to compensate them for being able to work with you. And then a lot of times too, a lot of times people will, when they're running the analyses, they'll say like, oh, okay, I only have to put 5% down. There's also a lot of closing costs that can go in, and those can vary a little bit by the state that you're in. And the state of New York, it's typically like 3.5%. All those costs are important to factor in.
Yeah, you have to calculate it all.
So also a common misconception with BRRRR is that what we mentioned earlier is that like you need these massive guts. Like we always joke, like we're no Chip and Joanna Gaines, right? So we're not going in there knocking out walls per se. This property only needed about $2,500 of work. It was mostly cosmetic. Really, the distress wasn't the property. The property owner or former owner owned it for 12 years. They were ready to no longer be a landlord anymore, and they were trying to close on their dream home. So they needed cash quickly, right? So we were able to come in, understand what their pain point was, work to solve a problem for them. And then ultimately we were able to solve it by getting them cashed out. I think, yeah, we all in all, it took about 30 days to get them cashed. We waived inspections. We did walk the property with a local contractor, though.
When you're a real estate investor, you are a problem solver. So we saw a distressed seller. We said, hey, we can close quickly. We won't cause problems. We don't even need an inspection. We don't need an appraisal because we're buying it in cash. And no inspection doesn't mean we don't look at the property and make sure it's a good fit for us. We went, our contractor came with us. We looked at every inch of that property and made sure any challenges we were willing to inherit. Like we have a baseline of non-negotiables. Like if there's a massive structural issue, we're not touching it. So if there's massive electrical issue, massive heating issues, we're not touching that. That's our personal criteria. So we do look at our properties a lot and really make sure it's a good fit for us and what our skill set is. Okay, so renting out the units. So at the time of close, the property had 2 vacant units and one tenant was paying $775 a month, which was like painfully low for market rent, but paying tenant for us was better than having a third vacancy at that point. So once the units were ready, we listed everything within 14 days. I think it was actually less than that. But the entire building was rented for $2,875. So we did a very quick turnover. Like we needed to do new locks. We got cleaners in. We painted. Like it really, this property needed nothing. So we used that rental income to pay our monthly payment to the hard money lender. So if you go to a bank, you buy a property, you get a mortgage, and every month you make a mortgage payment to the bank. The way private and hard money works is your lender is your bank. So for us, we paid this couple every month because they owned the property essentially. Well, they lent us the money that helped us own the property. So we just paid them that 12% interest every month. Rents could have been higher, yes, but for us, it was a priority to get it rented and know that within time you can gradually raise rents.
And the reason, you can go ahead. The reason that was so important too is because now that the property was rented, now we had a rent roll we could actively show. And you have two kind of things co-occurring, right? So on one hand, right, you're networking a ton to find a lender going into the property and just the act of finding a property. But then once you're in it, now you're co-currently renovating, renting, fixing up the property. And then you're also working to find a bank that's willing to cash you out via a refinance. And so there's a lot going on. And like I said earlier, in a relatively short period of time, a lot of times people will buy a property, you know, and they're thought 30-year fixed rate mortgage. I don't really have to think about financing for a very long time. With the BRRRR strategy, it's a very truncated timeline. 6 months, you'll be amazed how fast 6 months can go by, especially when there's money coming and going. So originally, our plan was to use the purchase or use the hard money that we borrowed in April, stretch it all the way out to October. That was a 6-month agreement. When we began the process of finding banks, it looked like we would have be able to get about a 5.5%. This is where we were back in 2022 when rates were still relatively low. And then all of a sudden, rates kind of started taking off on us while we were going through the refinance process. We actually had an appraisal come in. The appraisal came in incredibly low, which was kind of overwhelming. We ended up having a second appraisal done, which was nice, came in higher, but we also took on a much higher interest rate.
So the property is performing awesome today. So this is just a breakdown of the numbers. So rent collected, total payment, the reserves that we take out for any, we have like a little savings fund if there's any updates or maintenance things that we need to do. So it cash flows, this is genuine cash flows, $700 a month right now. Rents are still below market in one of the apartments, so we're actively working to raise it. So the total amount invested, 29,000, cash on cash return of 29%. So the present market value, it's gone up quite a bit since we purchased it in 22, almost 300,000. So we have about $126,000 in equity.
So, and one of the things that people will ask
I'm gonna
too,
stop our share.
one of the things that people sometimes will ask, will say, if you don't take all of your money out of a BRRRR, like, was it even successful? Was it a failure? So on and so forth. So as a point of reference, right? So if we had gone, call it a traditional or more conventional route of buying this property, 25% down, still would have had the same renovation cost, we probably would have paid just under $60,000 in total, right? Whereas because we got creative, we used a hard money loan, we hustled, so on and so forth, we kept our all-in cost below $30,000. And because of that, and we won't go into it, but we were able to then buy, I think, another like four units like 7 months later, because we were able to keep a lot of our cash aside.
What people need to realize with BRRRRs though, right, is you have the initial closing when you buy it with the private or the hard money. So you have the down payment and the closing costs, but you need to refinance it. That's a part of the BRRRR. So then you have a second closing where more money is coming out. So you have to account that you're going to have cash coming out for both of those double closings. But as Josh just said, even with those two closings, we spent about half that we would if we put down 25%. So that is it for that case study. Definitely want to open it up.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. It's like a front row seat to learning so much. So thank y'all so much. One question was, I didn't understand the refi strategy from the case study. Could you please re-explain? And then the second part of that is, who did you guys use for refinance?
Perfect. Yeah, I can do it. Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna, so I'm like less of the number person, so I feel like I can explain it in a non-technical. Do you know what I mean? Like I'm gonna explain it how I would need to explain to me. So if you see a property that you like and you want to do the BRRRR strategy, you would get creative financing, so private or hard money. This is essentially like someone's writing you a check and you're giving it to the seller.
Yep.
So we got hard money. So we said to the seller, here's $190,000. We own the property now, but we have a loan with our hard money lender, right? So every month we have to pay them interest only payments at 12%. So that 12% interest, we have to pay them interest every single month. Now that's usually only short term. It's not usually for a 30-year span. It's a bridge loan. So we had a bridge for 6 months where we had to make those interest only payments. So they are essentially the bank. Bridge loans are not forever, they're temporary. So once those payments were coming to an end, we had to take that property that was financed through that bridge loan hard money lender, and we needed to put it on a 30-year bank loan. So we went to a bank and we said, hey, we own this property. Our mortgage is $180,000, right, through the hard money lender. We believe it's worth $240,000. Can we apply for a loan? So when you apply for a loan, you have to get it appraised, right? So we had an appraiser come out. They looked at it. The appraiser said, yes, Josh and Allie, you're geniuses. It is worth $240,000.
The second guy.
Yeah, the first guy did not say that.
You're idiots.
That guy was an idiot. Yeah. But anyway, so the appraiser comes out, they tell you what it's worth, and then the bank, you refinance it. So what that means is you're no longer going to have the bridge loan to the hard money lender. You're going to have the loan to the bank. So when you refi, you go through a whole closing again. It's like you're buying it again. You're just getting a loan through another person. So you still have to pay the closing costs and all of that. But now, instead of being on a 6-month bridge loan, you're on a 30-year loan, and we had like a fixed interest rate. Did I explain that in like a simple way?
I think you
I
nailed
feel
it.
like I tried to be
I think,
cohesive with
yeah,
it.
I think you nailed it.
So in terms of who we went through, I don't have any specific recommendations for that. I know Backflip does awesome lending for bridge loans and whatnot, but you know, the thing that I would say with a 30-year mortgage lender, shop around, you know, see who can give you great rates, competitive deals, any incentives with that. You can go to like a brick and mortar bank like KeyBank, Chase, Wells Fargo. You can go to credit unions, or you can go to a mortgage broker. So this is a person who's like an individual entity, and they will shop you around at different big box banks. But also know that once you buy the property, they're going to sell it off the loan.
Mhm.
Awesome. While
Yeah.
we're on the like numbers money side, a question about that. So it says you mentioned you put 5% down, 10K of your own money and cash to close, plus closing costs was $16,650. Did that include your 10K?
Yeah, yeah. So that was our down payment. That was our closing costs, and I think also the $2,500 for renovation. I say renovation, but it was really just like updates.
Wherever you are in the investing process, this is such an empowering experience to be able to, you know, take control of your finances and invest and improve your life. But it's challenging, so just know that like you're going to take 2 steps forwards, you're going to take 10 steps backwards, but just staying consistent and working towards your goals, you'll get there. So it's been awesome to connect to everyone.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, it really is all about the people connections. Download the app so you can start to analyze your properties and make that next step in your journey. Again, thank y'all so much. We'll talk to y'all soon.